This is Arby's quarter-pound pulled pork and chopped brisket. Both are smoked slow for up to 13 hours. Tender, juicy barbecue like this isn't magic, although there is a lot of smoke involved. Poof!
Arby's, we have the meats.
Here at the Virginia Aquarium, family time is free time. Kids 4 and under are free. Come and see for yourself. Get your tickets today at virginiaaquarium.com.
Grimy outdoor messes? 30 Seconds Outdoor Cleaner tackles tough messes like these in seconds. Just spray it on, then rinse away built-up grime. Works fast on siding, brick, furniture, and more. 30 Seconds Outdoor Cleaner. Erase outdoor grime in seconds.
This is Arby's quarter-pound pulled.
Hey, thanks everybody for joining. Just going to get a quick update on some of this happenings at the White House today on the shooting.
Inside the White House for the latest information.
They're going to go to you.
Hi, Tommy. So we just got some new information from the White House, according to the press office. They said shortly after 6 p.m., an individual approached the Secret Service checkpoint outside the White House. This is at 17th and Pennsylvania Avenue, so just one block behind me. You can still see that there's a large police presence here. This involves the FBI, Secret Service, and of course, D.C. police. So the White House telling us that there was a preliminary investigation at this point that indicates that an individual approached. He removed a weapon from his bag and he began firing at police officers. Secret Service police officers then returned fire, striking that suspect, who was later transported to an area hospital where he later died. During the shooting, a bystander was also struck by gunfire. So the White House press team at this point telling us that it's really unclear if the bystander was struck by the suspect's initial gunfire or during the subsequent exchange of gunfire. So some big breaking news there from the White House. And one thing that we're learning from the White House, there were no injuries to members of the Secret Service, any of the personnel there. The president, again, was at the White House. We were continuing to follow all of the latest developments in a lot of these high stakes meetings that he held today with members, the leaders of many of the countries in the Middle East, as the White House continues to try to push forward this new deal with Iran. And more details of that will come out tomorrow. So all of this happening about an hour after we were told we wouldn't hear from the president again. We wouldn't hear anything from the White House. So the press team just releasing that statement. So that gives us a little bit more insight into exactly how all of this played out. Again, a large police perimeter around here. Even though we have been told that the lockdown was lifted, all of these streets continue to remain to be blocked. The only people that I've been seeing coming and going are people in businesses, people in hotels. Again, this is a heavily trafficked area. So we have been seeing some people coming and going if they were already on this block. We know that some journalists were still at the White House when all of this took place. They have been told that they can leave through one of the exits. Where we're standing, however, again, no one's getting through where we are. We have been seeing some of these members of the Secret Service come and go, but not letting anyone pass this location here. So again, the breaking news there that the White House says that that suspect who did open fire has died. Tommy.
Hey, Alex, it's Alicia, real quick. You were a war zone reporter before heading to D.C., and you were reporting from the same place we saw people who could hear ducking for cover from the shots. Do you feel safe there? We're running out of time here, but do you feel safe from where you're standing at the White House when you report?
Yes, as you mentioned, I've been in a lot of situations where I'm typically wearing body armor when I'm overseas. A very different situation. I do have to say that I do feel incredibly safe by the incredible men and women who protect this area every day. We see some of those faces behind us here. That being said, what I do for a living is not what the average civilian and citizen should be used to. Thankfully, we live in a country where that kind of violence is not normalized. That being said, the D.C. police once again telling people not to come near this area, even though they do believe that this threat has been neutralized. Alicia.
Alex Hogan, thank you so much.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube.
Hey, they also have identified them. I don't know if you guys seen it yet, but they have identified the shooter as a 21-year-old Nazari Best. We'll go ahead and jump onto that. That's the shooter. They just not too long ago have identified him as the shooter. Let's see, the way it was worded, it said he's been identified as 21-year-old Nazari Best. He said he believed he was Jesus Christ and opened fire on the White House checkpoint. Is what was said. So kind of want to get on here and kind of get that out. That's something that just broke not too long ago. Also, it seemed like they knew about him too. The Secret Service has had encounters with him before, trying to get in the White House. So that's something new too. He said he previously attempted to infiltrate the White House multiple times, and apparently this was his final attempt. But kind of want to get on here and kind of show everybody kind of what was going on. Also, the AP has got it. This is kind of the get that brought up. Here is the area that he was shot in. I don't know if you guys seen this or not.
I'm talking to Zeke and a little bit Deputy Bureau Chief. So they also Stone Mill saying that this guy is the same guy who jumped on Denison. So they're sending me home so that I can go out in the morning. You got anything else you think I ought to be doing? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, bro. Thank you. That's your body. I'm. Okay. Wait. Second. Yeah, I've been to China twice. Before you were born. 86 and 87. Just barely. Just barely. You look very. Emily, it's been a pleasure. Vice versa. I mean, fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you for the trash bag. Cheers. Ma'am, you can sit there.
No, I mean, I haven't pulled till I said, but I'm hoping and assuming till I said, I don't think we're like color. Actually, it's not.
Nothing's changed as far as what's on the ground there?
No, they've not changed. That's great. That's great. It's already programmed.
You should go with it.
And we've already broken into two programs.
So Alex is with me doing one sports on the on the way here, trying to make it the briefing tonight. Rolled out Alex!
That was hilarious. I'm going to be White House. Okay, I think we're pretty close.
Are we going to break?
Yeah. No, yeah.
I'm doing a report on Kyle Busch. I'm listening to it.
I was literally on my way for drinks.
I ran. There was a fender bender on my way home on 295, so I put my BT lights on, passed a half mile on my shoulder to wave this.
Hey, Emily, are we out of this tackle reserve?
Hey, can you guys talk to me, please?
It's there. You hear shots going off. And that is the, for those just joining, that is the shooter in the picture. And this is the actual scene that's unfolding right now where he was shot.
Vistaprint prints everything to get your brand in front of your fans, like t-shirts, water bottles, and totes. So everyone.
Here's some more shots as the news reporter was filming.
What is that?
Sounds like fire.
Today, but this obviously comes just a couple of weeks after a shooting at the White House correspondence.
You hear the number of shots.
What is that?
Sounds like fire.
Today, but this obviously comes just a couple of weeks after a shooting.
That's crazy.
At my dinner table.
Yes, yes. I'm going to show you something first, though, down the street, because you can actually see law enforcement personnel picking through the crime scene right now. I'm going to show you that first, then I'll go to that Selena Wang video, and then that full screen. Okay? It's still Brian Abel, correct?
I have more fun with this video.
Those two guys are still there?
Yes, not 3 guys. I want you to come take a look at the screen.
I can't.
Like,
Close to me.
no, during when I was in bed.
Oh.
Come take a look at it.
Yeah. Right, Brian. First, I'm going to show you, though, there was some additional activity with law enforcement right at the spot where the shooting occurred. At least we believe that's right where the shooting occurred. I'm going to step aside, and our photojournalist is going to zoom right past me down to the spot where the shooting occurred. You now can see law enforcement personnel actually coming through that spot where the shooting occurred. We believe that's where it is. We saw some medical equipment there. We saw some what we believe were either bandages or clothing that were bloodied. We saw some surgical gloves on the ground. Now you can see some law enforcement personnel actually kind of combing through that area. Also, we have a piece of video we want to show you. ABC News correspondent Selena Wang says she was getting ready to post a video. She was taping a video to post on social media on her phone when the shooting occurred. She was outside the White House, but in the complex. Here's a clip of her response to the shooting when it happened. That area. Also, we have a piece of video we want to show you. ABC News correspondent Selena Wang says she was getting ready to post a video. She was taping a video to post on social media on her phone when the shooting occurred. She was outside the White House, but in the complex. Here's a clip of her response to the shooting when it happened. That was ABC News correspondent Selena Wang at the moment the shooting occurred, right there at the White House complex. Some information that we're picking up now in our reporting from our colleagues Josh Campbell, Holmes Librand, and Evan Perez about the suspect. According to 3 law enforcement sources, the suspect is identified as 21-year-old Nazir Best. According to one source, he had previous encounters with the Secret Service, including 2 in June and July of 2025, one when he blocked an entry lane to the White House, another when he was arrested for attempting to enter a White House complex driveway. Brian? Thank you very much.
All right.
This is the location where the shooting occurred. Just joined Gunman, pulled a gun out while he's crossing the street, thought he was Jesus Christ and opened fire. Ultimately was shot by Secret Service and took to the hospital and later died.
Our group, which I was like, oh, that's not right. But I give it to her.
I think the mic is right here. Great. Do you need help breaking down?
No. Right. Ghostbusters. Good seeing you, Brian.
Oh, is that?
Yeah, okay. There you go. I feel like you can do so much. I like that. I just have to get Yeah. I give it 10 minutes. And then, what, any more right back to the zero? What? Hi, how are you doing? Okay, how can I help you? You sure? what? The turbo engine? That saved the day.
Oh my god, my balls.
One clear, my good, one. So, easy hit.
Good? Yeah. Oh.
This right here, guys, is the reported shooter. That has been identified as Nazir Best, 21-year-old. He has been, by multiple news outlets, said this was the shooter. And he was saying he thought believed he was Jesus Christ. He just joined. But anyway, that is the presumed gunman. Yeah, you know, the gunman died. There's been reports maybe one other person got shot, but a bystander. But I can't confirm that. But that's what I've heard, that it has been reported. They said he came running out of just across the street, pulled a gun out of his bag and started shooting and said he was Jesus Christ. And of course it wasn't. I think a lot of those shots we probably heard was Secret Service shooting at him, but apparently it wasn't but a handgun.
Cancer's hard. I experienced life at St. Jude.
That's where all of this went down shortly after 6 o'clock. As for the gunman, not much is known. However, the New York Post reported just a short time ago, sources told the public gunman believed Christ and no service as was a mentally troubled individual. Service had typically run across as that individual loitered around various entry posts and had violated a previous order to stay away from the White House. And that's according to most sources. That article has been going on right here. Things quieting down a little bit, not as much. A lot of the bystanders were here at 9 o'clock. They've all left, and federal officers Now, though, we are live along here. Well, you see.
Whenever there's breaking on Saturdays, it's raining.
Oh, really?
Remember the last time the White House Correspondents' Dinner? Mm-hmm. One minute, got you.
There would be showers will bring us.
What's that?
Mm-hmm. Got you.
Okay, well, I did the look live earlier.
A little bit from earlier.
He then fired toward the White House 3 times, and the United States Secret Service, they returned fire. We don't know how many shots that they got off, and they apparently took the gunman down. Now, sometime in this gunfire exchange, a civilian on the street was struck by this gunfire, and we do not know the condition of that person right now. But the important thing to know is that the gunman who came up with the pistol and was taken down by the Secret Service, and we don't know his condition right now, but he never got inside the perimeter of the White House. And this is according to a senior administration official with direct knowledge of what went down at the White House this afternoon. This was right around 6 o'clock Eastern time.
So, Chad, so if I'm hearing what you said correctly, this was somebody who was just firing in the direction of the White House?
Bullfrog Spas came up with a method that utilizes.
It was something that the Secret Service obviously perceived as a threat. Obviously, we're told that gunfire apparently was directed toward the White House. If you get toward the west side of the White House, and we're trying to figure out precisely where this was, you have the old executive office building now called the Eisenhower Executive Office Building, which is kind of a big complex if you're working from west to east toward the White House. So we know that he was firing in the direction of the White House, and this is the preliminary report from someone who's very senior and would have direct knowledge of this information. Again, a lot of people in town. There was one source that had, questioned me earlier, even before we had this information. There's a lot of motorcyclists in town for the Memorial Day events. They always come for this time, and people thought it might have been, motorcycles backfiring or something like that. There's quite a cacophony of that. But this is clearly someone who came up and was firing at the direction of the White House. And the president, of course, is at the White House today.
Hey, Chad, Kevin here. If I could just get you to break down again, based on what you've heard, this person was taken down. Does that mean they have been neutralized, or do you think they were they sort of made physical contact with this person? I'm just trying to get some clarity there.
I was told that they were shot because the Secret Service returned fire against this individual.
Gotcha. And have you heard from any cabinet secretaries or any other high-level officials about what's happening?
Yeah. This is all we've got right now. It's Memorial Day weekend. People are spread to the 4 winds, and the reason I always jump in on this is that I used to cover local government, and the best stories about the county sheriff's department would come out through the county commissioners and vice versa. So when you cover Congress and something's happening in the administration, a lot of times you check in there. But I was also checking to make sure there wasn't some sort of a threat at the Capitol as well, and this led me down this road here. Now, again, to reiterate to our audience, this is what we have at this point. This is very preliminary and fragmentary. So around 6 o'clock Eastern time this afternoon, you had a gunman who came up near what is known at the Capitol as Gate 17. This is the outer perimeter around the White House. It's a rainy day in Washington. I was downtown today. Not as many people in downtown Washington as you would typically have on a Memorial Day weekend, simply because of all the weather. Very, very chilly for this time of year here. He came up on the west side of the Capitol, and he brandished a pistol and started to fire in the direction of the White House. and he got off at least 3 shots, we're told, and the United States Secret Service returned fire, took him down, and there was a civilian somewhere on the street who was struck by this gunfire. We don't know by whose gunfire right now. But again, to emphasize here, he never got in the general perimeter inside the White House. And when you're looking at the orientation here, you can see, and there's this ambulance in the video going by here. The Eisenhower Executive Office building is just up the street from that. So this happened kind of down, I would estimate, from the southwest corner of where that was at this stage.
Hey, Chad, it's Alicia Cunha here. You mentioned that you'd covered local politics and law enforcement there. So I'm curious, when we saw the shooting of the White House Correspondents' Dinner, there was an immediate coming to the cameras by not only the president, but also by members of law enforcement. This is a different situation here. What do you anticipate in terms of communication by law enforcement as the evening goes on? Are we going to hear from anyone? It's not really like the Secret Service, is it, that would come up and give a press conference?
Well, we wouldn't know directly, but since the Secret Service did, in fact, fire, according from these reports, it would seem that they would probably comment at some point in some format, be that on X or social media or something else. I would expect that the, D.C. police might be involved. Did they know something about this suspect, or was there some, behavior observed? There's a lot of cameras around the White House, and so they might be able to track this person's movement. You also have the police that work with the Transit Authority in Washington, D.C. Did he come out of the subway somewhere, the metro? Is there something like that? So these are the types of things that they will go back to start to evaluate. But primarily, I would presume that this is a Secret Service issue, but also just the fact that it's at the White House. And let me give you some context here. What this immediately reminded me of was that you had a gunman who came up to the White House, and this is where history is often our guide, in October of 1994. It was, again, a Saturday afternoon. It was a nicer day. I remember that. And came up, and he was on the other side across from Lafayette Park, the side that you always see, kind of the beauty shot of the White House from that side, and was shooting that direction and actually struck some of the windows of the White House down where the press room is. Now, this was a different situation. Again, this was somebody who had come up there, in 1994. But that's what this struck me as similar in terms of the fact that it was a Saturday afternoon, and the White House, gunfire being directed in the general direction of the White House.
Chad, Tom Shalhoub. So we were looking at social media when this first came out. We heard 30 shots fired. You mentioned it sounds like about 3 shots max from the shooter.
What are you doing?
And we're assuming the rest of those shots came from Secret Service. In your experience, how many guns are right there available? If a shooter opens fire at the White House, is there many, many guns that are able to be trained on them?
Absolutely. I mean, you have snipers, you have people all over the place. This is one of the most heavily fortified facilities in the United States. Again, I cover Congress. I walk into the Capitol every day, and I probably pass anywhere just on a routine day 10 to 15 officers, and they're all armed, and these aren't even the heavily armed officers. The White House is fortified in a different way. So, yeah, I mean, that's where you might get up in that number until, as according to my source, that this suspect was taken down pretty quickly. And again, as I say, there are other, police forces in that area of Washington, D.C., the Metro Transit Police, Washington, D.C. Police, Capitol Police are not very far, George Washington University Police. You might have, if it's something that's just off the White House grounds, a Convergence Park Police, National Park Service is not very far. The National Mall, you might have a lot of people jumping into this depending on what the request might be or what officers see and hear.
And Chad, this also, for me, harkens back to, again, not too long ago when we had somebody show up at Mar-a-Lago, perhaps in a similar fashion to this. You mentioned the security presence and posture around the White House. One would expect it would be one of the most secure areas in the world, certainly in the country. So if somebody was in the vicinity and they're just shooting off, they had to have understood that they weren't going to get that close to the White House. I mean, for someone to do that and just shoot in the general direction, they had to have known that there would be a response pretty quickly. This couldn't have been somebody who thought they were getting the element of surprise surprise here. It doesn't sound like someone very strategic.
Well, that's where I talked about what happened in 1994. This person just opened up fire on the White House on the other side. You know, that was a completely different situation. I mean, you have had incidents down the White House where, you know, the threat has not been toward the facility itself or the president of the United States himself, where you've had local crime. In Washington, D.C., you might remember when President Obama was in office, and it took them quite a while to figure this out. There had been what was alleged to be, you know, gunfire, gun activity by gangs downtown. And I remember the Secret Service director testified that said, well, you know, we don't know what it was. And they found out later that there had been, and this was found by a White House housekeeper, that there was a window that was broken at the White House in the Obama residence portion of the building. And I remember our colleague Trey Gowdy at the time, he was a congressman from South Carolina, and he was on the oversight committee when they had the hearing. She said, well, it was hard to see and everything. And he famously said in that hearing, can you hear at night? Meaning that it doesn't matter whether or not there was a direct threat toward the president. And they divined later that they were trying to shoot at the White House and were trying to attack the president of the United States in the case of Barack Obama. And they just kind of dismissed this as, you know, casual gunfire in the area, as much as one can dismiss casual gunfire in downtown Washington, D.C., near the White House. And people said, we don't care what it was. You know, this is near the White House. There should be a better response. And certainly in this case, if there was a threat, or even if it wasn't, you know, we don't know the motives of this suspect here, they certainly were able to neutralize him quickly. And that was not the case when you had this threat with the Obamas, and one of the windows was actually broken then. And it took them weeks, nay, months to figure out that this was actually an attempt to kill the president of the United States.
If you are just joining us, you are looking at live pictures just outside the White House. It is on lockdown. This is very likely 17th Street, which is on the western side of the White House. You see Secret Service activity right there. Reports of gunfire. In fact, there are some reports online. We've seen video of some of the people who were actually reporting at the time of the gunfire. We are being joined by our chief congressional correspondent, Chad Pergram. Chad, if you would recap for the folks who are just joining us, what you know and what might be happening even now as we continue to watch these pictures.
Right. And the first thing that we've gotten in here from the Secret Service, you were asking me a few minutes ago about, you know, who might put something out, that the Secret Service just a bit ago put out a statement saying, quote, we are aware of reports of shots fired near 17th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest, and we are working to corroborate the information with personnel on the ground. Additional information will be provided as it becomes available. So to the viewers just tuning in right now, what we have here, around 6 o'clock Eastern time, there was, you could hear people who were on the ground there. I wasn't there, but there was a report of gunfire near the White House. And I jumped in here because sometimes, you know, when there's a threat at the White House or the executive branch, maybe there's something going on at the Capitol. So I started to dial in with sources there. We're told that this was on the west side of the White House grounds. Again, you have the White House, and you also have the outer perimeter there, Gate 17, as it was described to me, near the Eisenhower Executive Office building. Somebody came up and brandished some sort of a pistol. I'm told that it was a pistol, in fact, not a long gun or a rifle or anything like that. And the alleged gunman got off at least 3 shots. And the United States Secret Service, who obviously prowl that area, you know, some things might not be obvious to people walking by, but certainly to the people, you know, guarding the perimeter. They responded to this. They're trained to respond to that gunfire. And I'm told, and this was the quote that was given to me, that they took the suspect down. Quote, they took him down. So this is a male suspect. I'm also told that somewhere in this process that a civilian was struck. We don't know how many shots that the Secret Service or other law enforcement might have gotten off. Again, they'll have to go through the ballistics evidence of this, and we don't know the condition of the gunman or the suspect. But the important thing here is that the President of the United States is safe and that the alleged gunman never got inside the White House perimeter.
Navan, the #1 rated business travel platform, lets your team book work travel in one place. Flights, hotels, cars.
Chad, it's Alicia again. You know, as we're watching some of these videos pop up on social media, it's hard not to be hit with watching people do live shots and then get interrupted and duck from Gunfire. There was another reporter I saw. She said she was recording, and then the look on her face when she ducked. I don't know if you were at the White House Correspondents' Dinner that night, but all of us, I mean, so many of us will never forget watching all of those people, all of these reporters. It's starting to feel a little dangerous just to be out by the White House or to be in the proximity of the White House and its occupants if you're a reporter.
Well, that's something that's concerned me for years. I mean, I've covered, Congress for, several decades now. I remember when, it's just not the White House, it's those of us, who report on the Capitol as well. I remember when the 2 Capitol police officers were shot and killed in 1998, certainly 9/11. You had a guy come up just a few weeks after January 6th in April of 2021 and ram the north barricade at the Capitol and severely injure one officer and kill another. The baseball practice shooting that nearly killed Steve Scalise and wounded several other people happened blocks from my house in Alexandria, Virginia. I was there pretty quickly. This happens over and over and over again in different formats, whether you were at the White House or whether you were at the Capitol. In fact, I called a White House reporter, somebody who's a friend. I don't know them unbelievably well. The day after the Correspondents' Dinner, I was not there, and I had indicated, I said, hey, I've been through this, a couple of times myself. How you doing? And so this is something that is starting to be a common denominator among those of us who cover, these installations in Washington, D.C., and also in, that would be at the Capitol, the White House. I wrote an essay some years ago that was on our website where I characterized some of what we do. We're kind of like war correspondents, frankly. We don't go to the Middle East or Asia or something like that, but here on Capitol Hill or covering a baseball practice for the Republican baseball team or whatever, these things happen. And it's terribly, rattling to have this happen over and over and over again. And I think that, the seminal question here, again, we don't know the motives of this gunman here, but was asked by Peter Doocy the night of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. He said to President Trump, why does this continue to happen to you? Why do you think that happens? There have been multiple attempts on the president's life. Again, we don't know what was happening here. But, again, letting history be our guide, we know what happened at the White House in 1994. That was during the Clinton administration that I talked about a few minutes ago. We know what happened, that there was, shots fired into the residence of the White House when President Obama was in office. So we've had these types of things happen. It's just part of, it's very reflective of the society in which we live right now and where we are with our government and history.
Well, and Chad, we know President Trump has been so dedicated to making D.C. a safer place, just in all respects, so that people can enjoy being out and about in D.C. Obviously, this could be something very different, but it all goes hand in hand in terms of safety. Social media, unfortunately, when something like this happens, social media goes wild. There's a lot of speculation, people trying to be first to report things, and oftentimes it's untrue. We're seeing a lot on social media that there were 20 to 30 shots fired. I believe Kevin mentioned that earlier. From your sources and your official sources, it doesn't sound like your sources are saying there were that many shots fired. Can you clarify for our audience that might also be looking on social media?
Yeah, I mean, they don't know how many shots. Now, we said that people had thought they had heard, 20 to 30 shots. That we just don't know yet. The only concrete number I have been given was that there were 3 shots, and that was fired by the gunman himself, not the Secret Service. We don't know what they shot here. And just since we've been on the air in the past couple of minutes here, I've been told here, and this is from the Washington, D.C. police, the Metropolitan Police, they are saying the Secret Service is working an incident in the intersection of 17th and Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest. Please avoid the area. So that's all we know right now. But again, the only concrete number, and this will probably change, once they figure out, okay, what caliber of weapon he had, how many shots, was he capable of getting off? Did he actually get that many off? Sometimes they'll actually find the casings or whatever it is. This is what happens in the investigation. But that was a distinct number they gave me of 3 shots that were fired by this alleged perpetrator, but we don't know how much, fire was returned by the Secret Service.
Chad, I think one of the things we're going to be most curious about is the person who's described as a bystander or a civilian. I assume that there's some type of protocol that we're going to have to wait to hear based on identification, notifying family if the person is hurt or fatal. Is that to be expected, that it might be some time coming before we know who that is?
Well, if they took them down, one would think, and we saw at least some video there, that there was an ambulance driving away from the scene. George Washington University Hospital is not very far from the scene there. That's where President Reagan was famously shot, where he was taken after he was shot during the assassination attempt in 1981 when he was shot at the Hilton, which is where the White House Correspondents' Dinner was about 3 or 4 weeks ago. But if there was a civilian who was injured, in fact, and we don't know what the degree of the injuries are there, or certainly the alleged gunman, then that's probably where they might have taken them. I might also say, depending on one's injuries, that MedStar, which is in Washington, D.C., which is kind of in the center of the city and not far, that is a level 1 trauma center in the District of Columbia. And in fact, depending on one's injuries, that's where Steve Scalise, the House Majority Whip, that's where they took him from Alexandria, Virginia, across the river because of his injuries were so serious. So again, depending on things, that might be in play as well in terms of where they might take you.
Chad, thank you so much for giving us all of those details. You're definitely our go-to, and we appreciate you being on the phone. Joining us now is Alex Hogan, live outside of the White House. Alex, what is happening on the ground right now?
Here's the pen that erases scratches instantly. Look, no cut, no Photoshop. We let the liquid.
Alex? Perhaps we're going to go back to Chad while Alex gets up and running. Obviously, we just spoke to her earlier on a different issue, so we're going to go back to Chad, who is luckily still on the phone for us.
I'm
Chad?
here.
I noticed something. If I could jump in here really quickly, Tommy. Right now we're looking at a picture. Again, this is probably I Street, just to the northwest of where most people walk in, Chad, along Pennsylvania Avenue. And I mention that because, the National Guard shooting occurred literally right along this same street, right around this same area. And again, I think it speaks to, and I'll be fair. I think, thank goodness, since the National Guard has come to town, things are clearly safer. They not just feel safer, they are safer. And yet you will have pockets of crime that do happen. You'll have instances that happen. In this particular circumstance, again, 17th is not immune to what can happen in a large city like Washington, but it's obviously heightened, in particular when we know the president has just gotten back to the White House not that long ago. We have these high-level meetings happening with the Iranians. There are a number of different ways you might interpret what has happened here today.
Okay.
Chad, can you hear me?
Yes, I got you there, Kevin. I'm sorry, we were having a little bit of a technical issue here. Pose the last bit of your question to me again, please.
Yeah, not a problem. I was just saying, especially when you consider the pictures we're looking at right now, this is the northwest side of the complex along 17th. You'll recall the Secret Service, or make that the National Guard shooting occurred not terribly far from what we're looking at in terms of these pictures. And yet, while D.C. is demonstratively safer now that we've had the National Guard in town, it doesn't mean a city like D.C. is immune to circumstances like this.
Yeah, and that's one of the other things they'll have to, parse out. Was this, in fact, something that was directed, at the president, at the White House? You're looking at that kind of, mall building there. Those are offices of the executive branch there. In the distance with the flagpole at the top. That's the Eisenhower Executive Office building. So you're right in that complex there, and you do have, quote, regular crime that happens in this, in downtown D.C. And that's where I remember there have been several of these incidents over the years where there's been some crime in downtown D.C. and people have heard things. One wonders if maybe they were more aggressive and more attuned to this, as maybe they should be, considering the threats to the president, considering what happened at the White House dinner, just a couple of weeks ago, consider what happened, at Mar-a-Lago, considering what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, so, and as you cite, and we see them here on the screen right now, Kevin, these are, members of the National Guard there who've been brought in to help make D.C. a little safer. Yes, there is crime in downtown urban areas all over the country here, and D.C. is no different. But again, the reaction around the government complexes and around the White House and around the Capitol, that's why, there's a little bit of a different security posture here right now.
Hey, Chad, it's Alicia again. So I've been to D.C. a handful of times. I've seen the outside of the White House as a tourist, but I've never been there as a reporter. So I don't know the area very well, and I'm sure there are Americans all over the country who don't know this particular block very well. You talk about office complexes and such and the security posture right now. Do people live there? Like, do normal people live right around in this area, or is it just offices and law enforcement and very official things?
It's not as residential in that immediate area, the few blocks there. But if you were to go just to the west there, if you were, say, at the Eisenhower Executive Office building and going west, you start to get into some apartments there. You certainly get into where some students live in dormitories at George Washington University, but you're in pretty much downtown D.C. And there are more apartments if you were to go further to the east, further to the west. But that area there's not much. There's law offices, there's some businesses, there's lobbying firms, there's the famous K Street, which is not far from there. It's not a lot of people that live there. Some of the famous clubs in Washington, D.C., I'm not talking about the ones that you go to dance at necessarily, but the ones where people go that are the old money clubs, so to quote unquote, in Washington, D.C., those are in that area as well. But a lot of government is in that area. And again, to orient people and where people might be here, if you were to go down that street, away from our shot, follow our shot down the street, you get in a couple of blocks to Constitution Avenue, the National Mall. Again, it's rainy, chilly this time of year right now in Washington, D.C., but there's a lot of people in town for Memorial Day concert at the Capitol, always a big deal. A lot of people come in. You have the motorcycles that always come in this time of year. I saw a number of them today driving around the city who come in for the Vietnam and remembering our fallen heroes in the United States. And so, a lot of this is happening not far from where some of those people might be. Some hotels are certainly in this area. In fact, I had coffee with a friend today who was staying at a hotel, and we weren't that far from this location right here, to be frank.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube.
Dean, who is live on the street where the shooting occurred outside of the White House. Libby, I know you've been speaking with your law enforcement sources. What are we learning about this suspect?
We've learned the name of that shooting suspect. It's Nazir Best, according to the law enforcement sources that I've been speaking to. Natasha, we've also moved locations. Right now, we're on 18th and Pennsylvania. We were actually up on 17th and H earlier. So we've moved down because this is where the shooting happened at 6 p.m. tonight. And just down, you can't really see it because it's blocked by these police cars right now. But just down this street, right outside what's called the People's House, which is actually a mock-up of the White House that people tour, there is an active crime scene right now. You've got tape up, obviously, right here. And this extends, because we've been walking around the blocks outside of the White House, it extends actually several blocks each way. And this is actually a very similar blockade to what we saw after the White House Correspondents' Dinner. But what we're learning, that new information that we've got, is the suspect's name, and that's Nazir Best, according to the law enforcement sources that I've been speaking to, Natasha.
Appreciate that, Libby. How has the scene transformed over the last few hours? And also, what are we learning in terms of this individual, this suspect, being an emotionally disturbed individual, and apparently a stay away order, of course, before they took a pistol out of their bag and started firing at law enforcement, Secret Service at that checkpoint today?
Natasha, that is something that my source mentioned just before we did this hit with you, and that is something that we're learning, that emotional order that you were talking about. As far as the scene that you asked about, I do want to show you, of course, we've got FBI on the scene here. There's also the Metropolitan Police Department as well. You can see, I mean, clearly a very large law enforcement presence. You've got them walking down Pennsylvania Avenue. I mean, this is quite the sight to see all of this law enforcement presence and them just walking down after they've looked at this crime scene just down the way there. And I will say another thing that I've learned from my sources tonight, Natasha, President Trump was inside the Oval Office. He was talking to some of his aides, one of those being Stephen Chung, the communications director at the White House, also Margot Martin and Natalie Harp, who is constantly by his side. That is a trio that is constantly with the president, and they were with him when this incident happened, according to the law enforcement sources that I've been speaking to. But of course, it's been a very busy day at the White House. President Trump wasn't even supposed to be in town this weekend. He was supposed to spend the weekend up Bedminster at his estate there. Instead, decided to come here back to the White House to work on this potential deal with Iran. And that was, of course, the focus. But now things have shifted. And you're seeing, of course, this very, very large law enforcement presence here on the ground, Natasha.
Are we hearing anything directly from the White House tonight, just confirming that the president is safe or that he is even back to work? We know he's trying to hammer out this deal with Iran. Do we know anything about his condition or anything tonight?
So the communications director who was with the president when this incident happened, according to him, he is now still working in the Oval Office, President Trump. That was a little over an hour ago that he posted that. And of course, he was trying to hammer out this deal, but it wasn't the first time that the president has been trying to do something and then an incident like this has happened. Think about the White House Correspondents' Dinner just a couple of weeks ago. He was trying to deliver a funny speech that was going to be filled with jabs. Then we saw that take place. And now the president was trying to hammer out this Iran deal. And then this incident took place. It doesn't seem like it really affected what was going on at the White House in the West Wing specifically. Of course, they would have taken those security precautions with the Secret Service. But as far as still working, that's what the president's communications director says he's doing.
Yeah, Libby Dean, really appreciate you speaking to those sources and bringing us that breaking information. The suspect's name now released tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our News Nation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.
All right, guys, you can kind of see what happened. This is the subject that did the shooting.
For more, let's bring in Jennifer Koppendorfer, former FBI special agent.
Identified as self as Nazir Best. Thought he was Jesus Christ, went on a shooting spree toward the Secret Service at the White House, ultimately got took down. Just want to jump on here, kind of give you everybody an update of what happened, and the subject being identified. Let me do this too. I didn't realize I didn't have my camera on. Sorry about that. But anyway, thanks everybody for joining as usual. Very tragic incident happened at the White House today, and I know you guys probably been looking at the fire out in California at that chemical facility, which they don't know if it's going to blow or going to leak out on the ground or what. That's another story. And also, right after this happened, there was a shooting in Texas where I think 3 people got shot, maybe 1 killed. Not sure, but that's just all happened in the past few hours. So anyway, guys, bad world out there. Y'all stay safe. Just want to kind of break in here and give y'all an update what's going on beyond what we do locally. Appreciate everybody watching, joining, and subscribing. We're going to jump off now. The next time, guys, we're out. Everybody be safe.